You know, when I think about the Moors murders, it's not just the brutality of it all. It's the fact that these crimes happen in seemingly ordinary places.
Right.
Markets, streets.
Even a fairground?
Yeah. We've got excerpts from this incredible long-form Medium article
Oh, wow.
that really pulls back the curtain on this case. So get ready to deep dive into the story of Ian Brady and Myra Hindley and the horrific crimes that shocked Britain in the 1960s.
What always fascinated me about this case is the enduring mystery. It's been decades,
Right.
and we still haven't found the remains of one of the victims, Keith Bennett.
Oh, wow.
It speaks to the lasting impact these crimes have, not just on the families, but on the public psyche.
Okay, so let's set the stage for you. Between 1963 and 1965, 5 children vanished around Manchester, England. Their disappearances would later become tragically linked to Saddleworth Moor,
Right.
this desolate, almost haunting landscape that became their final resting place.
Yeah.
And at the heart of it all, you have this chilling partnership, Ian Brady and Myra Hindley.
Right. And the psychology of these two is really where it gets interesting.
Yeah.
You have Brady, obsessed with Nazism, devouring books on sadism and true crime from a young age.
Wow.
It makes you wonder, did he see himself above conventional morality?
Right.
Above the law? Did he dehumanize his victims, viewing them as less than human?
It's unsettling. Then you have Hindley, who was considered a good babysitter by some.
Right.
How does someone who seemingly cares for children go on to commit such heinous acts? Was there something inherently dark lurking beneath the surface? Or was she truly molded by Brady's influence?
Oh, the nature versus nurture debate is a complex one.
Yep.
Some experts suggest that individuals with certain personality traits might be more susceptible to manipulation, particularly in intense codependent relationships.
Right.
Hindley's later confessions complicate things further.
Yeah.
While she initially claimed to be under Brady's control, she'd admitted to a more active role,
Oh, wow.
even deriving a sense of power from the crimes.
So let's talk about the victims. Pauline Reed, just 16 years old, was the first to disappear. The lost glove trick, it's almost too simple.
Right.
Too brazen. Why do you think it worked?
It plays on our natural inclination to help, especially when it comes to children or someone who appears vulnerable.
Right.
Plus, these abductions happened in broad daylight, in familiar places. It's a reminder that predators often exploit our sense of normalcy,
Right.
our trust in the everyday.
Tragically, Pauline's body was found on Saddleworth Moor, and the nightmare was just beginning. Next was 12-year-old John Kilbride, snatched from a bustling market, the same lost glove tactic, again in broad daylight. It's chilling how Brady and Hindley seem to operate with such audacious confidence.
And it's a pattern that tragically repeats. Think about Keith Bennett, also 12, who vanished on his way to his grandmother's house.
Right.
His case remains unsolved. His body never recovered. For his family, the torment never ends. They're forever trapped in this agonizing limbo of not knowing.
It's heartbreaking. And then there's Leslie Ann Downey, only 10 years old. To lure a child from a fairground, a place meant for joy and laughter. It's just evil.
Right.
And then to record her torture, her pleas for her mother.
Wow.
It's almost unbearable to think about. What does that tell us about their psyche?
The audio recording is one of the most disturbing pieces of evidence in criminal history. It suggests a level of sadism,
Right.
a desire not just to control, but to inflict suffering. It's a deliberate act of cruelty, of documenting their power over their victim.
It's beyond comprehension. And sadly, the reign of terror didn't end there. Edward Evans, 17 years old, became their final victim. But this time there was a witness, David Smith, Hindley's brother-in-law.
Right. And this is where the story takes a turn. You have Brady, who had been so meticulous, so secretive, suddenly involving a third party.
Right.
It speaks to a level of arrogance, a loss of control, perhaps.
And Smith, to his credit, immediately went to the police.
Yeah,
It's chilling to think what might have happened had he not been there that night.
absolutely. His courage stopped them, prevented more tragedies. But the trauma inflicted on those 5 young lives and their families is immeasurable.
So we have these 5 young lives tragically cut short, their stories interwoven with the desolate landscape of Saddleworth Moor. What stands out to you about their individual cases? About the choices Brady and Hindley made?
The escalation of violence is particularly disturbing. The first murder, while horrific, was relatively quick.
Yeah, right.
But as they continued, the level of cruelty,
Right.
the duration of the suffering they inflicted seemed to increase.
It's a terrifying glimpse into the darkest corners of human nature. And to think that these crimes were committed by people who, on the surface, seemed relatively ordinary.
Yeah.
It challenges our assumptions about who is capable of such monstrous acts.
And that's what makes this case so compelling, so enduring. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves, about the potential for evil that lurks within us all.
Yeah.
It really does make you question everything you think you know about human nature. And the trial, well, that was a media frenzy, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
The details that emerged, the sheer depravity of it all, it gripped the nation.
Absolutely. The public was horrified, demanding justice for those innocent lives. And remember, this was just months after the death penalty had been abolished in Britain.
Right.
Do you think that played a role in the public's reaction, in their demand for accountability?
It's certainly a factor. The timing is significant. Many felt that Brady and Hindley's crimes were so heinous, so calculated that they deserved nothing less than the ultimate punishment.
Right.
But even without the death penalty, their life sentences meant they would be locked away, hopefully forever. Though, of course, Hindley's attempts at parole later on stirred up a whole different storm of controversy.
And let's not forget the search for Keith Bennett. His mother, Winnie Johnson, became a symbol of resilience, of a mother's unwavering love.
Yeah.
She campaigned tirelessly for information about her son's whereabouts, right up until her death in 2012. It's a reminder that for the families, the pain never really goes away.
Winnie Johnson's story is both heartbreaking and inspiring. To carry that burden of not knowing, that desperate hope for closure for decades, it's unimaginable. And sadly, Keith's remains are still out there somewhere.
Right.
On those vast, unforgiving moors.
It's a chilling thought. But, after their convictions, Brady and Hindley took very different paths. Hindley sought parole multiple times,
Right.
claiming she was manipulated by Brady, that she'd found religion and redemption. Brady, on the other hand, confessed to the murders in 1985, seemingly to ensure Hindley remained incarcerated. What do you make of that?
It's fascinating, isn't it? Their contrasting approaches really highlight the psychological complexity of the relationship. Was Hindley truly remorseful, or was it a calculated attempt to gain freedom? And Brady's confession, some argue it was less about remorse and more about exerting control even from behind bars. He wanted to have the final say, to ensure Hindley wouldn't escape the consequences of their shared actions.
It's a twisted game they were playing, even after being convicted.
Yeah.
But, their relationship, their shared obsession with darkness, it's a story in itself.
Yeah.
You can't fully understand the Moors murders without understanding the bond between Brady and Hindley.
Absolutely. It was a toxic, codependent relationship that fueled their darkest impulses. They were drawn to each other's fascination with the taboo, the forbidden. And that shared darkness, it ultimately consumed them both.
So let's rewind a bit, back to their early days. Hindley was completely infatuated with Brady, seeing him as this brooding intellectual rebel.
Yeah.
She was drawn to his interest in Nietzsche and sadism and pushing the boundaries of conventional morality.
And Brady saw in Hindley someone he could mold, someone who would share his twisted worldview. He introduced her to literature that glorified violence and cruelty, encouraged her to abandon her religious beliefs. He was systematically breaking down her inhibitions, shaping her into a willing accomplice.
And their relationship quickly became intensely sexual, incorporating sadomasochistic elements, fantasies of violence. They found a thrill in pushing each other's limits, in exploring the darkest corners of human desire.
And this is where that line between fantasy and reality starts to blur.
Right.
Their sexual dynamic became intertwined with their criminal desires. They began to crave the power, the control they experienced in their private life, but on a grander, more sinister scale.
It's terrifying how quickly things escalated. They started by fantasizing about robberies, with Brady urging Hindley to get firearms and driving lessons. These weren't just idle thoughts. They were meticulously planning for something far more sinister.
Exactly. They were actively preparing, acquiring the tools and skills they needed to carry out their twisted plans, and the choice of location.
Right.
Saddleworth Moor, it wasn't random.
Yeah.
That desolate landscape,
Yeah.
the isolation, the bleak beauty held a strange allure for them.
It was their hunting ground, a place where they could act with impunity, where their darkest fantasies could play out undisturbed. And the sources we have describe Brady as the mastermind, the dominant force.
Right.
He manipulated Hindley, preyed on her insecurities, twisted her perception of right and wrong.
He was a classic manipulator,
Yeah.
a master of psychological control. He broke down her defenses, eroded her sense of self until she became a reflection of his own twisted desires.
But it's not a simple case of manipulation, is it? Hindley's own confessions, made years later, suggest that she wasn't just a passive follower.
Right.
She actively participated in the abductions, and it seems she derived some level of satisfaction of power from the crimes.
That's the truly unsettling part. While she may have been initially swayed by Brady, she ultimately made her own choices.
Right.
And those choices had horrific consequences. It speaks to the complex interplay of individual culpability and the toxic dynamics of their relationship.
So we have this disturbing mix of manipulation, shared obsession, and a chilling escalation of violence.
Right.
Their relationship, it's a dark reflection of the human capacity for both love and cruelty.
It's a reminder that evil doesn't always announce itself. It can hide in plain sight, wrapped in a seemingly ordinary relationship, fueled by shared darkness and a hunger for power.
Yeah, it's a case that continues to fascinate and horrify us even decades later. The Moors murders really cast a long shadow over Britain, didn't they? It changed the way people thought about evil, about the vulnerability of children.
Absolutely, it shattered the illusion of safety in everyday life. Suddenly, these ordinary places, markets, streets, parks, felt dangerous. Parents became much more protective of their children. It's a fear that, to some extent, still lingers in society today.
And think about the impact on law enforcement. Did this case change the way police investigated missing persons cases, particularly those involving children?
Significantly, the Moors murders led to improvements in forensic techniques, in how evidence was gathered and analyzed. There was a greater emphasis on profiling, on understanding the psychology of predators. But more importantly, it highlighted the importance of community awareness, of people speaking up when something seems wrong.
You're right. Several people had reported seeing Brady and Hindley with the children before their disappearances, but those reports weren't acted upon in time. It's a tragic reminder that sometimes we have the information to prevent these horrors, but the pieces don't connect until it's too late.
And that's a burden that investigators carry, that sense of what if. But it also underscores the need for open communication between law enforcement and the public. We all have a role to play in safeguarding our communities.
This deep dive has taken us to some incredibly dark places. We've explored the crimes, the motivations, the lasting impact. But what I keep coming back to is the enduring grief of the families. Their loss is unimaginable, compounded by the fact that Keith Bennett's remains were never found.
It's a wound that never truly heals. The not knowing, the lack of closure, it's a constant source of pain. Winnie Johnston's dedication to finding her son is a testament to the enduring strength of a mother's love.
She never gave up hope, and even though she passed away in 2012 without ever finding Keith, her unwavering determination continues to inspire people. It's a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable tragedy, the human spirit can endure.
Yeah, it's a testament to the power of love, of hope, even in the darkest of times.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the Moors murders, I have to ask, what's the one thing you want our listener to take away from this conversation? What's the most important lesson we can learn from this dark chapter in history?
I think it's the importance of vigilance, both as individuals and as a society. Evil often hides in plain sight, but it's not invincible. By understanding the warning signs, by speaking up when something feels wrong, by supporting the vulnerable in our communities, we can work towards preventing such tragedies from happening again.
It's a powerful message, and one that I hope resonates with our listener long after this deep dive is over. Thank you for guiding us through this difficult but essential conversation.
It's been my pleasure, and to our listener, thank you for taking this journey with us. Remember, knowledge is power, and by understanding the darkness, we can strive to create a brighter future.